that is going to also help us think how to move some of these ideas, and she's going to present on behalf of the Global Women Scholar Network. And she has 15 minutes before she goes to the airport.
All right, but I actually think that some of the discussions flow into this, and you will have an opportunity to maybe think about some of the points that I will be making after my presentation. And it's not just me presenting, my colleague Gillian Bowser is here too, and I will have the pleasure of deferring all the questions to her. What is the need for networks and networking and linking and connections? We have a problem that is global, that is very complex, that actually needs a multiplicity of insights, skills, and approaches. And I think that's also what came out of our discussions now, that there's things that women can do, there's things that happen in different countries that would actually benefit other countries to know. So the sharing of information is critical in these efforts, and it's not just the sharing of information, it's also the collecting of information. And I will be talking about a couple of examples of where really linking data collection is very important too. Climate change is a global phenomenon, so it doesn't make sense to just collect data in Indonesia, for example, or in France. We have to do this on a global scale. So when we think about networking, we usually think about networking people, but I would like to make a point of also thinking about networking data and networking documents that exist. So that we actually have knowledge flows. I think we have a lot of initiatives that are happening around the world, but not necessarily the linkage between them. And networks are also important for social support. So it's not just the information that flows, it's also the behind the scenes talking about how do you feel about this, how can we help. And Francois was asking, why don't we have more engineers, for example, that are women? And that's very often the case that women don't necessarily see that as an aspiration, as a job, because it's a very male-dominated job where they would also, some of them actually enter engineering studies, and this is what we have been looking at. So the proportion of women entering the sciences and engineering is actually quite equal, but the women graduating is very small. So technology and how does it change networking? Here's an example of a network on data collection that takes advantage of technology. It's the National Phenology Network, and we have been working closely with it through different initiatives. It has this effort called Nature's Notebook, where basically it realizes that climate change knowledge is global knowledge. And I think we should make the argument that it is also female knowledge very often. And so Nature's Notebook basically gives people the tools to monitor species in the areas. So women, for example, could go out into the garden and record whenever specific flowers would bloom in their backyard. And then you see here that it's taking advantage of Google Maps to then share that data and visualize some of the findings, so you can have a look at what is going on. Similar, I don't know if you've heard of Project Noah. Project Noah now links mobile technology with the web, where you can use your mobile phone to take pictures of an animal or a plant that you see. You upload that picture to the network, and then other people will comment on what kind of species that is. Well, there's incredible knowledge in a database like this. You have people on the ground reporting on species. And then there's documents that are floating around, and we are working with a group in Europe, the ecoresearch.net group, that looks at climate change related documents that are issued by companies, so it's the company reports, by governments, by mainstream media, but then also climate change conversations that happen on social media, so all the blogs. And it uses semantic technologies to link concepts and make the space searchable. So think about networks and why they are important, but also think about what their characteristics are. And the network I would like you to kind of refer to here is the internet, because I think it's a very good example of what a network is and can do. There's no one who owns the internet per se. There's some people who claim that they invented it, but there's no ownership of it. There's no central place where the internet resides. And there's basically no limit to its growth. It's growing constantly, it's dynamic. Nodes can be added at any point in time. It's flexible in the sense that it doesn't matter where those nodes are being added. It's robust, and this was actually the reason why the internet was invented. Because if you take one node out, if one computer somewhere dies, that doesn't necessarily disrupt the whole internet. Networks are incredibly efficient for spreading messages, and because message flows can be multidirectional. If the networks are diverse and global, we can have very different kinds of messages spreading, and I think this is where the gender issue comes in. We need the women to be part of these networks, because otherwise we will have groupthink, we will have male-dominated thing. But networks can make that possible. Networks can have affiliations that are informal. You don't have to necessarily declare yourself as a member. You can link into a network. And networks are very often self-organizing. So you don't need someone who's in charge of it. Networks are scalable. They can be very small. They can be very big. Here's an example of a network, Climate Wise Women, that is rather small. There's a couple of women who have gotten together because they are facing climate change issues in their communities, and they are exchanging their experiences through this network. So right now, I think there's about five, six climate-wise women participating in this network. Why do we need to think about networks specifically for women? They do have a different perspective, and I think they have, though, a female perspective that could be shared. So it's important for sustainability to take advantage of the knowledge that resides in women. But they very often lack the networking opportunities and the network support that male counterparts have. Women are not the ones usually going out golfing with other women. So the other thing that we see a lot, especially in the sciences, is the lack of role models. So they don't necessarily even think about being a leader because they don't see other women doing it. So the project that we're participating in, that we have received funding for, is this Global Women Scholars Network, where I'm just going to briefly talk about it and tell you more about it. Where we recognize that a lot of the science that is being done on climate change is done by male scientists, and that we need to change something about that, and that we need to take advantage of the female skills and knowledge, and need to make sure that the female scientists and scholars are actually able to be promoted to survive in that environment. But then also, there's a lot of research efforts being done around the globe on gender and sustainability, and we would like to link the data. We would like to give scientists the opportunity to share. We are trying to do this virtually, so we're trying to take advantage of social media. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube. This is a session that we had with the US State Department at Rio, talking about women and natural resources and some of the problems that women face in that area. We also are trying to take advantage of some of those sophisticated semantic technologies, so working with Arno Scharl, our colleague in Austria. He is a thematic map of documents that he found on the internet related to women and climate change. And he's playing around with different ways of actually visualizing connections among documents. So you can actually then see where that topic is coming from, which documents talk about that topic in a specific way, which documents are related in terms of how they talk about gender and climate change. So we are trying to link documents and understand what the global conversation is about gender. Yeah. So the other thing that we have realized is that there's actually a lot of networks out there, and a lot of great initiatives that we need to think about networking the networks. And for example, in Rio, we tried to host an event, or we hosted an event where we tried to get some of the networks together so that we can build bridges across networks. And it was quite amazing to see the multitude of efforts and the diverse approaches, but still the commonality among these networks. And we think that it is important to make sure that we find ways to get the synergies out of all of these networks. So what do we have here in terms of challenges to make this happen? And this is my last slide. I talked with someone from a Brazilian finance network for climate change yesterday, and she was like, well, it's great, but how do I get the members of my network actually to contribute? And that's always a problem. What are the incentives for people to contribute to the network? We can name networks, but networks, especially if they're self-organizing, they have to have a strong commitment and a strong incentive for people to actually do something. Yes, we have all these technologies, but we are finding that there's still a need for high touch. We get together, we're always very excited, but how can we sustain that initial excitement? Critical mass, it becomes more interesting for others and more others participate, and you always need champions, because you will always have free riders in the network to take advantage, so you need to have people who contribute. So these are our thoughts, and I'm sorry that I had to rush through this and I have to leave, but thank you again, Lorena, for giving us the opportunity to talk about this.
Any comments or suggestions? Or probably when we open the discussion after the next presentation, then Gillian, if you're going to stay, you can take, on your way out, you can grab a sandwich on. It's on, lunch is served at the hall number 3. So, it is my great honor to introduce you to Juliane Sedler. Sorry, Juliane, if I am not pronouncing it okay. At the moment, Juliane is a regional vice chair of the Southern and Eastern Africa CEC, and she's also at the moment a candidate for global chair. And this event is being run in collaboration with CIS, the Commission on Social Issues, and the Commission on Environment, Education and Communication.
Right.
deliver the presentation to you. We had kind of a small work session, and my colleague Justine is going to speak to you. But just from our discussions and so, I've been picking up on a couple of issues in terms of involvement, collaboration with the CEC, which I think are of interest. And I think overall, speaking about gender and climate change, we have a little bit of a problem about branding and marketing. So you see we've got a good group of people here, but it's already the converted. So when you speak about gender as such, you have like, gender, you know, that set my wife there type of attitude. Or Lorena earlier on said feminist, and I'm quite proud to be called a feminist, but I can tell you that most of the women around me who I know will argue I'm not a feminist. So we really need to think about, if we want to bring these issues around the table, how we market them and brand them. And I see that from your materials, which are really great, but I think there's a bit of work that could be done. Then I heard a lot about knowledge, and I think knowledge is really empowering and important. But one of the biggest obstacles is to get the knowledge disseminated and absorbed. And it's us who produce the knowledge who either have to engage with expertise that helps us to think through, how's this knowledge actually going to reach the person that should have the knowledge, or we have to find a mechanism to do it ourselves. And I think that's, again, a really big issue in all this work that is really important. And I think a little bit of this will come across in Justine's presentation. And then something that definitely will come across in the presentation of Justine is that it's actually all about changing attitudes. And this is not quite so easy. So it's not just about having really cool flyers lying around, it's the first step. But you really have to think through your communication from the beginning. And either, as I say, you do it with the expert, or you train yourself a little bit on taking that on board. So I just think these are the sort of strategic entry points with the collaboration with CEC, the gender office and the various projects can definitely work with. And I'm handing over to Justine, who gives you a little bit more of a technical entry point into communication. And Hilma.
As a team effort, it's always going to help with the presentation.
Yes. The left.
Yeah, okay. How do you go back now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You just.
I'm sorry. All right, thank you very much, Lina. And thank you, Juliana. We had actually, I said we had a bit of a work session, but timing is not on our side. So I'm just going to give a very quick, kind of broad presentation on climate change communication generally, and then open up a little bit of a more specific gender aspect and how to communicate the gender mainstream imperative into kind of decision making. And this presentation is not really about the work that we do, it's more about tips on communication that we've learned from our own experiences along the way, and then even more so from experiences and lessons learned of climate change communicators that are much wiser than myself, that have been doing this for decades. So just to give a bit of a context, communication is not just about glossy brochures, advertising or whatever. It's about setting the scene, creating the right moments, sending out the right messages, and putting it in the right context. So it's a lot more than that, and I think we often tend to forget about these things. So just to give a little bit of a, get you guys thinking a little bit around communication and different ways on how to do it, I put together 2 multiple choice questions. And I'll pose the question, there's choices A, B, A or B, or C. And I just want you guys to think a little bit about what you would, which one you would choose. So, next. So question 1, what types of messages do you think are most powerful when communicating for change? Do you think it's A, shock messages, warning of doom if nothing is done? Or is it B, positive messages of hopeful aspirations? Or is it C, just giving scientific facts without contextualizing? Next, thank you. If you think about the climate change message that we've been getting for decades now, it's been very much focused on this doom and gloom kind of picture. You know, rising seas, melting glaciers, billions of people actually living on the brink of starvation and so on. And it hasn't really done all that much to change, or done that much to create a huge momentum, enough momentum to change. And there's a lot of research that goes around the fact that people like